Welcome, everyone, to Faces Friday. I'm really glad you joined me. And today I have a special guest, Dr. Alma Harris from Swansea University. And we're going to talk about leadership, our favorite thing to talk about, as well as how leaders collaborate in a meaningful way. So, welcome, Alma.
Thank you, Lynn. Good to be
Thank you
here.
for being here. Uh, Alma, I want to just talk about the research you've done to define leadership. What does that look like?
That's a very good question, and in a sense, it's probably the most difficult question to answer. Many people have written many books and many articles on the topic, but for me, leadership comes down to something very simple. It's about influence, and I guess my argument would be that in any school there are various degrees of influence, not just those who have the formal leadership responsibilities. So for me, leadership is about influence, hopefully the influence for good. And that influence can be expanded and stretched, which takes us into distributed leadership, of course.
Absolutely. And, when I think of distributed leadership, I think of truly releasing the responsibility for the leadership to another person. How do you define distributed leadership?
Well, again, there are different interpretations of that. But I guess my own view on distributed leadership is it's leadership that is ultimately shared, it's ultimately collaborative, it's ultimately inclusive. But it doesn't mean that everybody leads. I don't want everybody leading in my organization. There's still some strategic direction and overview for those with formal responsibilities. But I guess it's recognizing that in any organization, there's untapped leadership potential, untapped capacity. And if we release that through a distributed leadership model, then we bring more to the table in terms of resources and leadership capability, which includes teachers, of course.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I like your phrase, bringing more to the table in terms of resources, because to me, resources just isn't always buying things. Human resources are really essential, especially in collaboration work. So I know you've delved into the ability to collaborate. What do you think is essential?
Well, I think that we have to recognize that the skills of collaboration are actually quite intensive in terms of people's ability to collaborate. And you can't just self-combust into collaboration. They're quite, these are quite refined skills. And I guess, unless there's mutual trust, unless there's a sense and a willingness to collaborate and a persistence, and I guess the skill base to collaborate, then it can go horribly wrong. There's nothing magical about collaboration. We do it all the time. But in terms of collaboration for improvement purposes, that really does require intense work, actually. It is hard work, collaboration. And it isn't just superficial cooperation. And I think knowing the difference is where you see the real difference that collaboration can make.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of our research participants who participated with Beata Planche and I in writing Leading Collaborative Learning were quite definitive in saying there's no collaboration at my school, only fear. That was one of the comments really thought hard about. And another one was, well, the people in our school are in an elite group who are invited to collaborate.
Yeah.
So that goes to, I think, your work around equity and excellence.
Yeah, I mean, I think it can be the case that you can get enclaves of collaboration where people believe that because they're collaborating, then everyone is collaborating. And I think the principle of equity is giving everybody an opportunity to come to the table, giving everybody an opportunity to participate, and being inclusive. And I think if people don't want to work in that way, then that's absolutely fine. But I think the inclusive model means that everybody has the invitation, at least, to be part of that collaborative work. And recognizing, as I've said earlier, that work can be hard and can be long, because sometimes it's a lot easier sometimes to do things independently, and when you're working collaboratively, you have to bring the entire group with you, or indeed go with the entire group. And I think that's trickier in terms of some of the leadership challenges that perhaps, we face.
And, I often get the feedback, well, I don't have enough time to collaborate. I'm just going to tell people what to do.
Yeah.
That's a leadership style that actually doesn't progress us too far in increasing students' achievement. So one of the things that I often talk about is that time, that resource, time for reflection, and also time for leaders to roll up their sleeves and work alongside teachers. And that, to me, also is hard work. And, I've often written leaders in positions of power need to leave their egos at the door of the professional learning session, work alongside teachers. And I see the most effective school and system improvement practices are when you can't tell when you walk into a room who's the leader, who's the teacher, who's the support staff. So it is hard work, I agree. And it's not jazzy work necessarily.
But I think the leadership without ego part is really important, because it sometimes means that you say, as the former leader in an organization, I don't have all the answers, but there will be people within my organization who can help to solve this problem, or who maybe will have an answer. And it takes a certain degree of humility, I think, and a particularly strong leader, ironically, to distribute leadership within an organization, within a school.
Absolutely. And, I often talk about knowledgeable others just because it's a generic term. We have many titles for folks who are master teachers or lead teachers or teacher leaders. So I call them knowledgeable others. But I think a leader, a strong leader with humility, I love that, is one who has a knowledgeable other at their side, or many knowledgeable others to support the work. So I see leaders as being knowledgeable others to staff, but also that they have knowledgeable others. Would you agree?
Yeah, I'd agree totally. And the way I describe it sometimes is just to say to, teachers and leaders, what's the most important issue currently facing your school or your classroom, and who's best placed to help you to solve that problem. And it may not be the usual suspects. It may not be the people who run up and say, choose me. It may not be the formal leadership. And I think that's my point about within any organization, there are hidden layers of leadership and hidden capabilities. And the quiet leaders who don't push themselves forward don't have any less capability. They just need opportunity to come forward and be part of that solution.
Yes. And so it's that astute leader who taps people on the shoulder. I think that's sustainability. And we've seen a lot of new leaders, quiet leaders emerging in COVID-19. People, as you say, that we really never suspect, or the usual suspects, as you say.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I mean, in a sense, COVID-19 has given us a different sort of leadership, a new sort of leadership, and maybe a leadership that is a massive departure from what went before. But ultimately, that's distributed. It's in the virtual environment. That's all you have is distributed leadership, because the face-to-face opportunities have gone. So I think we are seeing a more sophisticated form of leadership as this, and ironically, as this crisis continues. But hopefully, that means a more inclusive form of leadership, the leadership, Lynn, that you espouse, and the collaborative work that clearly does get an organisation to better performance.
And for us, I think now in seeing these new inspiring leaders emerge, it's an opportunity for us to figure out how we keep that going. So I want to thank you, Alma, for being with me, persevering with the technology. And Jim, you have the final word.
I'm really interested in the notion of leadership complacency, which is being forced out. And more people are, to use Alma's words, accepting the opportunity to pick up distributive leadership. They're accepting leadership opportunities. So that complacency is being pushed out by COVID. I think that's one of the really positive outcomes of a terribly negative thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely, I agree. And I think in the future we'll see different leadership practices, possibly more, more creative, innovative leadership practices as a result of this crisis. And as you say, if that may be just one positive thing that comes out of this.
Thank you. Thanks, Alma, and thanks, Jim, for joining me on Faces Friday. Next Friday, I'm going to talk about adaptability, which we all are doing, that takes collaborative ability. So thanks again for joining me. See you next Friday. Thank you, Alma, so much.